Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems like the sound is not going through. Let me. Mic check. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Mic check. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Okay. Well, it's working. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Now that I got those technical difficulties out of the way, let's do a quick little overnight. I'm a little bit late. More clear to trade in 2 minutes. So let's do a little bit of overnight analysis. So the close of yesterday does have us bullish on the daily time frame now. And so I fully expect we'll revisit these highs. This week might be a stretch, but I do think we'll probably revisit all-time highs next week. Of course, we talked a little bit about fundamentals yesterday and how they move the markets, and so those notwithstanding. If we drop down to the 4-hour time frame here, we have inversed a 4-hour gap. However, structure is still technically bullish, as we haven't closed below swing low, and so we're retesting that inversion right now. And so we'll see if this holds. I think this new day opening gap down here at the starting at the 808s or so could be a compelling target. I'm just not sold on the downside just yet. So we are still bullish on the 4-hour. Now we have broken into bearish order flow on the 1-hour that I think also has left some pretty juicy upside there in the form of London and Asia highs sitting up there at the 970s or so, right above midnight open. So we get an hourly candle close here in about 20 minutes. I would really like to see this inversed for some moves higher potentially. Let's see if we got a 4-hour busy or a SIBI yet. It does not appear that we do. Of course, we get the 4-hour close in 20 minutes as well. So dropping down into our more intermediate time frames, we've just been chop city this morning. It looks like starting back at about 4:15 Eastern. So what we'd be looking for, I think, preliminarily, I think I would like to see more upside. Of course, ES is stronger again, it appears. Taking its Asia and London high already this morning. So that's kind of a bummer. It's a lot of liquidity. I'll be interested to see what ES does from here. A firm close over will have me probably looking for more upside, but this is also a pretty interesting area for reversal. So let's see what it offers. We do have Trump talking at 11 o'clock Eastern, I believe. And so that'll certainly be something to keep an eye on. Generally, they're pretty good about releasing like some bullet points of what he's going to speak on. prior to the speech, so hopefully we'll have a good idea going in just about how vital or impactful it'll be. Recapping yesterday a little bit, we had a really great trade yesterday morning. Had business done by I think 11 o'clock. So that wasn't too bad. Caught this retracement here, back up to the upside. Ended up selling. Where did we end up selling? Right about the 75s, if I remember right, or 70. So pretty good move. Pretty good move. They tried to fake us out with this scary red candle, and we caught the BPR violation back to the upside somewhere in the 24s, if I remember right. And so we were patient because this was kind of tough to sit through for as long as we did. And so we sat patient, waited for a good setup, good solid retracement, took out some liquidity. Aggressive move back to the upside, violated some pretty key PD arrays, and went to our target that we were looking for. So really happy with how that panned out. I think I took it for 45. My original plan was 50. So that's a good 3-to-1 RR. Kind of the sweet spot that we like. Kind of ugly overnight, honestly. There's some expansion a little bit in London to go take out some lows, it looks like. But since, like I said, since about 4 o'clock, we've just been chop city. So I don't know if the market's just collectively holding its breath for Trump's speech, but I don't know. He's always kind of, spouting off. So I don't know that we kind of have the risk of something crazy coming out at any minute. I don't know that this is any different. No gaps just yet on the 5. So even though these candles starting to look directional, you got to think there's these retraces in each of these candles. So it hasn't quite made its mind up yet, I don't think. I will say potentially be interested in this SMT here to London lows. This is kind of starting to look a little compelling. ES is certainly the weaker pair. Where are we at here? 855. It's only 45 points from where we're at right now. This is looking a little bit rady here. Just not seeing a gap to to inverse on the 5, which is kind of what I want, generally speaking. It just gives me a little more confirmation. ES does have a good chunk of low resistance liquidity right here. Yeah. Kind of looking like the SMT is not going to hold. Pretty slow so far. Just really want to wait for a little bit more structure to form. We've got, just this massive consolidation going for the last 4 hours or so. Really want to see if it'll maybe break and show some confirmation and expansion here.
Everybody, Peter Zion here, coming to you from the Matukituki Valley in Mount Aspiring National Park in New Zealand. We're pulling an entry from the Patreon page today, specifically if the Russian military is doing so crappily, and it really is, why do I still worry about what happens after the Ukraine war? Won't they spend themselves in Ukraine and then Poland, Romania, and the rest of NATO will be fine? Let me give you 3 reasons. Number one, this war ain't over, and just because the Russians have not performed to what they would consider snuff and have definitely proven themselves to not be the second most powerful military in the world. They're not done. We have yet to have a general mobilization. We have yet to see the Russians move up to a full war economy. And we have yet to see outside countries like, say, the Chinese really put their thumb on the scale. I mean, yes, the Russians are going through barrels much faster than they can replace them, probably 20 to 1, and the same with tanks. And the Chinese are stepping in with replacements, especially with drones. But the Chinese have resisted any sort of meaningful sanctions on themselves in order to collaborate with Western countries. So there's still a lot of things that could be put into the Russian column for force that as of yet have not. So we, unfortunately, may well still be in the opening act of this conflict, especially if we see a withdrawal of any major country's support for Ukraine moving forward. I mean, the Ukrainians have absolutely punched above their weight. They're absolutely doing far better than anyone had any reason to expect. But they're still the underdog by every measure, and they need a lot of outside help to stay in the game. So that's one. Number two, it's going to sound trite, but nukes. If we get to a position where 1, 2, 3, 4 years from now, the Russians do prevail, and they roll up to the NATO border, Putin and his team are going to have absolutely no reason to expect that they can take on Poland or Romania in a conventional fight if they're backed up by the Germans, the French, the Brits, and especially the Americans. But there's still that ace in the hole, nuclear weapons. So the scenario that Western capitals are stressing about is that the Russians do prevail in Ukraine. They roll up to the border of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania, and they basically bring in the French, British, German, and Italian leaders on a
It does look like this SMT is starting to hold here, with in Q moving back down lower. Problem is, it's not a huge. I mean, we're already just 30 points in profit, so I'm not exactly sure what we want to do just yet. ES is holding strong. I would really like to visit these London lows and think that that is probably what's going to happen here. So here's my concern. There is nothing saying that ES is bearish at all. And so, at least on the 5 minute and probably the 15 minute. And so, you have this classic case of is, both they're kind of going in opposite directions. Which one is going to sort of prevail? Which one is going to be the leading pair? And at this point, I just don't have a firm grasp on that. ES is bouncing. The midnight open is always, it's a pretty strong bounce point, no matter whether it's a break and retest or a test and reject. It doesn't matter. It's there's a lot. You really have to pay attention to it. To me, and so I don't feel good in this. Taking a short given the amount of information presented so far. In fact, yes, looking like it's about ready, coiled and ready to rip. Hmm. 4 hour close, 1 hour close coming up here in. Well, it just happened. No gaps to work off here. That's a pretty ugly chart, really, since open. Just trying to decide what it wants to do here at the highs. And sometimes, guys, this is just a good trading lesson, is sometimes it just runs. And, you know, you'd really have to be stretching for an opportunity for entry. And then I'll come back to bite you one day. Maybe it worked that time. But it'll 100% come back to bite you if you're hunting for trades. Sometimes, look, I'll look on the 5. There are no gaps to work with whatsoever. I generally, unless the market is just super one directional, I don't really work off of 1 minute gaps, except for inverses and confirmation. But there's no gaps to work from. So sometimes it just runs and it takes an objective without you, and you just got to be okay with that. Especially my trading style, that happens a lot. I'm pretty cautious in how I trade, and so that means I miss a lot of setups. But I'd rather take fewer trades, have a higher conviction, and hopefully a higher win rate that comes along with that than take more trades. I'm getting better, I think, at reading price action and probably building my confidence level up to the point where I'm starting to feel more confident taking more scalps, but I just haven't implemented it yet. So I see some of the guys like Brian and Lanto, and they can really they can be comfortable taking 2 or 3 trades a day, whereas if I get a winner, most of the time I'm not really interested in doing anything else. And so I kind of need to get out of that mindset and sort of trust that I'm really starting to get good at reading price and trust the experience. But That's probably a conversation for another day. I mean, this is just really ugly so far, boys and girls. Man, this is ugly. I mean, look at that 15-minute. Oh my gosh. Nasty. I think everybody probably is waiting for Trump. I don't see another reason for it because, I mean, we had high impact news this morning with initial and continued jobless claims. So, yeah. So I'm not really sure what another explanation would be. I know WEF is going on right now. I'm not sure when they wrap up over in Davos, but that may be part of it too. We kind of expected a less than ideal week with that, but let's see if it clears up. We're always looking for the market to sort of show its hand. I mean, that right? Isn't that that's sort of what we do as traders? And the market has clearly not showed its hand this morning so far. We're about 40, coming up on 45 minutes into market open. And so really our job is to just try to figure out what that show of hand is. And sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not obvious, but we have to sort of wade through and disseminate information and then make a best educated guess sort of to as to where the market's going. I will tell you ES is a fair bit stronger. It's certainly the stronger pair, so I think we're going to be playing. If we play longs today, we're going to be looking at ES for longs and probably NQ for shorts, just kind of depending on where we think the market's going. But even the hourly, I mean, just kind of stuck in between two gaps at the moment. Still bullish on NQ on the hourly. Let's see if ES is though. No, we just broke structure on ES. So now on the hourly, ES is bullish, with NQ bearish. So we've got less than ideal conditions here, and really needing a pretty good directional move to kind of tell us more, give us a little bit higher conviction.
Conference call. Just say, just FYI, we've already targeted your capitals. The missiles will launch at noon tomorrow. We're going to hit you with at least a couple dozen missiles each, so that missile defense really can't play a major role. Or you could withdraw any support for Poland, Romania whatsoever, and start a visible evacuation of all your forces in the area. And now I want to leave the conference call open and leave you guys to discuss. It's really a scenario we don't want to face. And then there's the third issue that's much more visceral. Russia's dying demographically. This is their last century for sure. And the question is whether they die fast or die slow. But make no mistake, the people at the top realize that death is now inevitable. The Russian ethnicity itself is fading away. And when a country feels it has nothing to lose at all, they're going to be willing to do things that other countries normally wouldn't, because they will live to fight another day. So think back to all the brilliant Russian engineers who existed during the Soviet period, who pioneered things like computer science and space travel, nukes, chemical, biological weapons. All of that can potentially come into play based on the time frame of Russia breaking. So this war, unfortunately, absolutely needs to be fought. And there are still many, many paths that it can follow, not a lot of which are overly positive. But what I can tell you is that every day that the Ukrainians manage to hold the line is a day that we don't have to worry about those other scenarios. Because a Russia that can't conquer Ukraine is one that becomes strategically unmoored and is vulnerable at 1,000 points. The bad stuff happens if the Russians do succeed in gobbling up all of that territory and can press directly on the Western alliance. And that ultimately is what the Western countries are fighting for. Ukraine's motivations are
I was just hoping to see a little bit better movement today with the red folder news. Hope is not a good strategy, but I had a better possible expectation for today than I did for like yesterday and the day prior. That's right. What happened is more than recoverable. We're all good. Yeah, I knew you were gonna give up, bro. You shorted into a higher time frame wick. So are you long? You shorted into a higher time frame wick. I knew you were gonna get fucked, bro. I knew you were gonna get fucked, bro. You know what else though? You shorted into a higher time frame wick. What about the higher time frame 4-hour inversion fair value gap up here? What about the 1-hour bearish fair value gap right here? What about the SMT in these wicks? Scale in. SMT, displacement down, bearish fair value gaps. Respecting, we trade up into the first presentation fair value gap again now. This short is still valid, dog. What are you talking about? My stop was just here. Maybe my stop was too tight. Maybe this trade plays out if my stop is all the way at the high. I don't want to do that because my risk reward gets effed. But this short could still play out. And to your point about, oh, you're trading a hard time frame wick. That's like the only thing I don't like about the ICT community. You know, it ain't like I'm sitting out here like, do they not hear when I go over my analysis and I'm explaining why I'm framing a certain direction? It ain't like I'm just picking a direction by flipping a coin. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I'm assuming dependent wafer got long and he hit TP, so congrats, I guess. This is uglier than Tyler's dog boys. Jax, get in here. They said you're ugly, dude. Your stop was fine, but your timing was off. Just my opinion. Can you even explain? I don't even know if that makes sense. Your stop was off. Your stop was right, but your timing was off. I don't think that's a thing. There's a saying in trading that if you got the direction right, but your timing is wrong, you're wrong. There really is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's like my buddy saying that there's going to be a Bitcoin crash below 20K again. Every time it goes up, I send him a screenshot and I'm like, "Yo, so what about that? What about that Bitcoin crash you said was coming?" They're just like, "Oh, yep, just keep waiting. It's coming. Just keep waiting. Trust me, it's coming." Inversely, I bought a I bought a other crypto back in like 21 off of his recommendation. I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying this is just the facts of the story. I bought a coin called Kudos. I put $30,000 into a coin called Kudos at like 4 cents. That $30,000 turned into $1,500. And I still to this day give him shit about it, because why would you not? Any guesses what his answer is? Just keep waiting, man. It'll go back up. It's coming, trust me. He won't admit that it was just like incorrect. So instead it's just wait. Just keep waiting, man. Trust me, there's a Bitcoin crash coming. Trust me, Kudos is gonna rip, bro. Kudos isn't even a coin anymore. It got migrated into Fetch AI. But anyway, so that saying rings true deep in my loins. I tell him the same thing whenever he says that. If you get the direction right, but you were off by 4 years, were you really right? Just like trading. If I get the direction right, but I'm off by, in this case, if I'm off by, 15, 16 minutes, not even actually, what would that be? If I get the direction right, but I'm off by 13 minutes, that is the difference. That is the margin of difference in trading. If you're off by small margins at a time, that could be the total difference between hitting your stop loss and hitting your take profit. That's what makes trading so difficult. But regardless, the reality is this condition here, I don't know if you want to call this seek and destroy necessarily, or high resistance conditions, whatever you want to call it. It's not really seek and destroy right now because we're not like broadening necessarily yet. We'd have to start taking out like the high and the low of the range and like, you know what I'm saying? But like the moment you start seeing these conditions, this is when you start, as an ICT trader at least, you're just like, yo, there's nothing here anymore. This is gross. I gave it my one attempt for what I thought should have taken place, and it didn't play out. So the worst thing I could do right now is be like, oh, maybe we're actually bullish. Let me get long. And then we go back. Oh, maybe my first idea was right. Let me try short again. And that's the mistakes that like a bunch of newer traders make, because those are the mistakes that I made all the time. Instead of sitting with a $600 loss, I'm like, I can't be red for the day. I need to make that fucking back right now. And then I turn a $600 loss into a blown account. Hey, Todd, question for our daily buys. Do you look relevant, equal high or lows? Yes. That's funny, Kanalski. That's like saying your golf shot was perfect and the hole was in the wrong place. I'm gonna say that this summer. I'm actually gonna use that. My shot was fine. The hole was just in the wrong spot. That's funny. I think Trump's speech would be broadcast. Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be. Probably a news network or something. He speaks at 11. According to ICT, when we have a small opening gap, the price will fill minimum 50% of the gap. It doesn't work today? ? No, he said 70 to anywhere between 70 and 120 points is literally hit or miss. It's like you have to look at all the other confluences to determine a bias or a direction. So in today's case, the opening range gap, $94 points. So we're smack dab in the middle of that. So I wasn't really referencing opening range gap too much in any sort of like bias today. So all I was really looking at was, when I zoom out to like a slightly higher time frame, like this 15-minute, I just see all this. This is what I was trying to target. So like when you're trying to figure out like bias or draw on liquidity, like that whoever asked, like, do you look at, what'd you say, like relative equal lows or whatever? Relative equal highs and lows? Yes. Like this is what you want to see. There is not an SMT down here, by the way. There is no SMT here. So like it wasn't like ES already took out the low. ES was the stronger of the two. So this is what I was going for. Was a move down below here, and then possibly something like that. So that was the idea, which could still play out. It's just, go drop down to the 1 minute. It's pretty nasty. Look at the 5 minute. Yuck. So yeah, with all that being said, that's the long answer of saying I defend my trades. I'll be the first to admit if I take a trade that is absolutely stupid. It makes no sense based off of nothing. But that is extremely rare, if ever. What's up, Twister? Trust me, there will be a good short this month. Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for something. We've been pretty sideways since the inauguration, which is interesting. Story of your life? Are you talking? Was I talking about the timing at that point? I forget what I said. My bad. Man, probably 8 months now, making good money every single month. But this month, I almost lost every single trade. 9 trades in a row. You got any advice for me? Well, I'm not far off. I've lost more trades than I've won in January. Especially on stream. My best winning trade was a couple days ago, and I took it in PM session. I posted it on Twitter and on YouTube, but yeah, my best winning trade, like the last 2 weeks, was in PM session earlier this week. But on stream, New York AM session, so far in 2025, I've lost more trades than I've won. So I'm with you. My advice would just be, don't get impatient. Don't get so frustrated to the point where you make bad decisions, and start breaking your rules. Your rules are not meant for when things are going good. Your rules are meant for exactly the moments like this. Exactly the moments where you're kind of, you're on a little bit of a losing streak. People think that bro, 10 losing trades in a row is not even like people want to act like that's not plausible, or like if you were to lose 10 trades in a row following your edge, like all of a sudden that just means your edge is trash or you don't know how to trade, or you know what I mean? But that's just not true. If you take a bigger sample size over, let's say, 1,000 trades, we all would agree that a good hit rate for most models, if you're like 50, 60% win rate, 65% win rate, right? Like those are all amazing, great win rates. But that also means, so if you take 1,000 trades and you win, let's say 600 of those trades, well, that means 400 of them are going to be losers. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why or when those win and losing streaks will come. Right? You might win 6 out of 10 trades, but over the span of 1,000 trades, 100 trades, 500 trades, you could have a win. Why could you? Why would it be impossible for you to have a losing streak of 10 trades in a row? It wouldn't be impossible for you to have a winning streak of 10 trades in a row. So the answer is your rules are in place for those moments, for these moments. Otherwise, anybody can be a good trader and good discipline when things are going great and they're winning all the time. The rules exist for moments like this. So don't over leverage, don't over trade, don't revenge trade. Stick to the plan. Stay the course. That's the only thing to say. And then like what PEJW just said in the chat, recognize bad conditions and avoid trading. That's what I'm doing at this point. Was recognizing pretty poor conditions as that trade was playing out, and then had my stop at a level where I'm like, if price goes to my stop loss, this is just terrible price. So that's what it did. I'm out of the trade. I'm not trying to get back in, not trying to chase it, not trying to flip and go long. It is what it is. Now I just sit back and read YouTube live chat comments. I don't know. But yeah, 9 trades in a row. Listen, it's going to suck. It's not going to feel good. And it's probably going to result most likely in a blown prop firm account, which can make it feel worse than it is. The reality is, sometimes the trick is, it might be like for your self-confidence at least, it sometimes could be better to view your performance through the lens of a live account. Because think about it like this. On a prop account, use Top Step, you make 3% on your account. Okay, let's say next week comes around, you lose 3% on your account. Well, guess what? Because of the trailing drawdown, you failed. Account blown. The account may have never been in drawdown even for a second. You might have just been in profit the entire time from start to making 3% and then losing 3%, account blown. Now, that could do a toll on somebody's self-confidence, right? They feel like a failure. They feel like they fucked up and they're not a good enough trader because they see everybody else having success and making all these payouts and like they just blew an account and they feel like shit. But in reality, it's like, okay, put that same perspective on a live account. You made 3%, you lost 3%, you're break even, you're right where you started. Are you a failure? No. Let's say you have a personal live account, you risk 1% per trade. You lost 9 trades in a row. You lost 9%, but you still have 91% of your account remaining. Are you a failure? No. You put money in the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, Bitcoin, whatever asset you like. It goes down 9%. Are you a failure? No. Do you magically you're the worst trader ever? No. What makes you the worst trader ever in that environment is when you retaliate with stupid decisions. It has nothing to do with you losing a few trades in a row, 9 trades in a row. It has everything to do with your response to that. If your response is like, okay, I'm just going to throw everything out the window now because I'm emotional, That's what makes people bad traders. It has nothing to do with taking losses. Do I recommend trading NQ minis on a 50K account? It's really up to you. It's kind of up. You're over leveraged for sure, technically, but it's up to you. If you come in it with the expectation of like, I'm willing to potentially reset my account a couple of times because you're pushing it hard, that's one strategy. If you're in a situation where you can't afford to blow accounts or reset, and you want to take it slow, then I would not trade minis. I would trade micros and divide your drawdown. That's always been my advice: is divide drawdown. I want to keep that on for a little bit longer. Divide the drawdown. Give yourself room for a losing streak, and a lot of people, they divide their drawdown by 5, 10 trades, which means you have to lose 5 or 10 in a row or somewhere in the middle to lose your account. And that's just, guys, that's the reality of prop firms. You don't have a lot of wiggle room as it is. Because you don't have a 50K account, you don't have a 100K account. You have either a $2,000 account, a $3,000 account, or a $4,500 account, right? Depending on 50K, 1K, 100K, or 150K. So if you think about it in terms of that, like if you were to risk, say you had a 150K account, $4,500, and you're risking 750. Which is 0.5% of a 150K account, but it's almost 17% of the actual margin. So you really only have a little over 5 trades. Like if you were 750 every single trade, which on one mini contract, it's very easy to have, a 25 to 35 point stop loss on NQ. But yeah, it's just really important to have a, honest perspective on things. You know what I'm saying? No, you're all good, dependent wafer. You gave me something to talk about and pass the time. You won't lie, you had a bullish bias when it came to my stream? Yeah, I also had a bullish bias. I just wanted to see manipulation first. So, like, look at this NQ chart. Look at the ES chart. NQ, ES. NQ, ES. I was wanting to see one of these manipulate below the low. NQ, or New York AM session here on NQ is, we're just in the middle of London range. No SMT at this low. Maybe. Am I about to scroll to YM and YM's going to have the SMT? Is that what this is going to be? Okay, no. If anything, it's if anything, it's bearish SMT. But no, yeah, I don't trade US 30. I used to like my screen up here where I have double, like, side by side ES and NQ. I used to do 3, so I used to do NQ, ES, YM. And it just kind of started fuck with me. Because what would happen is, like, let's say I took a loss. I'm like, why did price do that? We didn't even form SMT. Like, we have, like, kind of like what it's doing here, where it's like we got these relative equal lows. I'm like, why did it not go for the relative equal lows? I don't get it. Like, why did it leave those and then reverse? And then I would look, YM, of course, had SMT, right? So then I started looking at everything, because I'm like, I don't want to miss it next time that happens. And then what I kind of found was, like, I ended up overanalyzing everything, like literally everything. And it would be a clear setup if I was just looking at ES and NQ. And like I would, because I'm looking at YM as well, for just to take it into consideration. All of a sudden, I talk myself out of a trade. Trade plays out. I'm kicking myself, um, or vice versa. So it's just too. It was just too much to focus on. Just like looking at dollar. Like looking at dollar did the same thing to me. So now that I'm trading NQ like only, I don't want to look at too much stuff. I want to look at NQ in correlation with ES, and that's it. Me personally. Sure as shit ain't a winner. Tell you that for free. So you're saying if somebody has a losing streak, they're not a winner? They might not be a failure, but they're not a winner? That's interesting. If you guys want to see somebody that never has any losing streaks ever, you guys have found him in the live chat here today. Light Brigade Trades. Never once had a losing streak ever. Yeah, exactly, Galby. That's the roller coaster of trading. Everything's euphoric and you feel like you're never going to lose a trade again. You've cracked the code finally on a winning streak, and then market will humble you. But that's a trap. That's where most people delete all progress and they fall back into really bad old habits really quickly. Because it's really easy to do. Light Brigade, I'm also kidding, by the way. I'm just trolling. You'll know if I'm actually like annoyed with somebody because I'll put them in the VIP room. Otherwise, usually I'm just being sarcastic. It's been a while. I haven't put anybody in the VIP room in a while. Any volunteers? I am in 1.8% drawdown in January. It feels alive with all the emotions having now. Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, I'm down technically 1K in January overall, but it's all good. February could be a, you know, you just never know when the time's gonna come. You don't know when your winning streak's gonna hit, and sometimes your winning streaks are just out of this world awesome. Sometimes they're, you know, a little bit smaller, but I don't want to put myself behind the 8 ball by trying to force things when conditions maybe not be the best. When I can just wait it out and get to better conditions and get right back on track. When was the last time you fell back in progress? Fell back in progress. I'm there now. I'm way too experienced to be doing certain things. What do you do? I still make mistakes. And I'll break rules sometimes. I actually I forget where I heard this. I want to give credit where credit is due. I forget where I heard it, but I agree. Someone I heard once that, you know, your rules in trading, if you follow your rules strictly, like 100%, like if you follow your rules perfectly, let's say 90% of the time, you're doing really good. And that's more realistic. giving yourself the even that little bit of a grace for that 10% you make a mistake and you mess up. And what I mean by that is, like, you told yourself you're only going to take 2 trades max. Maybe one day you get, for whatever reason, you take 3 trades. You know? So that's what I mean by, like, sometimes you break your rules by a little bit, which happens. You know, you're not a robot. But I think if you can follow your rules perfectly up to 90% of the time, you're doing pretty good. When it comes to, like, when you say if you're falling back into old things, like kind of going off the rails, totally on tilt, blowing shit up, that is probably the only thing with, you know, social media, the prop firm space. Call it what you will. It's a great, amazing opportunity, obviously, in modern day era of trading for people to acquire capital and you know, take advantage of the upside with very little skin in the game. But I would be not totally honest if I said that there's a lot of people that the good that it does them only goes so far, right? Because when you're sitting around and you're looking at all these people on social media that aren't showing you both sides, right? They're really only showing you, for the most part, the highlight reel. They're showing you the good. You know, like, you look at these people that post these big P&L numbers from prop firms, but you don't know what they had to go through in order to get to that payout or to get to those big P&L numbers. Like, people don't realize, for someone that maybe, let's say somebody takes $100,000 in payouts, they might have spent $30,000 on accounts in order to do that. It may be not that much. I'm just giving you sometimes it could be more, sometimes it could be a little bit less, but, like, that's not really shown too much, right? It might be talked about after the fact, right? They might get a big payout, and then all of a sudden you hear them say, like, oh yeah, by the way, guys, I spent $25,000 to get to this. But by that point, they already got the big payout, so everybody's like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, worth it. Hell yeah, that's worth it. But what did that look like day to day? Like, day to day, going through 10 blown accounts, 5, you know what I'm saying? Like, 5 blown accounts here, 3 blown accounts here, boom, past one here, payout, boom, 5 more blown accounts here. Like, you see what I'm saying? So day to day, when you're really focused on the micro, like what's going on, it probably doesn't look as glamorous as it does at the end. At the end is where, you know, it looks good and it's easy to say, oh yeah, it was worth it. But day to day, when you're watching that happen, like, if you were watching all these people blow 5 accounts at a time, 10 accounts at a time, and you saw this happen often, you know, your opinion might change. You might be like, I don't know about that, actually. Right? So I think a lot of people's perspectives are just skewed because of social media. And it can be hard to decipher the differences sometimes. Like, everybody says, oh, I don't pay attention to anything on social media. I block everything out because I'm just God's gift to mental fortitude and nothing bothers me ever. And, you know, everybody wants to talk big and act like they don't. It's just like an athlete. You think an athlete really doesn't see the stuff that people say about him on Twitter? Get the fuck out of here. Do I think average day traders today, people in their 20s and 30s or potentially younger, who grew up in the social media era, are not seeing other traders talk about their successes on social media? Yeah. Okay. You might as well try to convince me that the 2020 election was free and fair. $200 live CFD times 500 leverage, or 198 Top Step. I mean, I never would promote a CFD account ever. So I would say Top Step. Let alone like prop firm or not. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna go the prop firm route, Top Step is what I'd recommend, as you guys know. But like, if you're gonna go the live account route and you trade, and if you trade Nasdaq, if you can, I would trade futures personally. I know a lot of people are in other countries, and I'm not familiar with like necessarily what obstacles people in other countries have with trading futures, if any. But yeah, I have a pretty jaded view on CFD. So maybe take what I say about it with a grain of salt, but I think it's jaded for good reason. Well, that's just the thing, Ken, right? It's like you could blow a combine. You could blow 5, 10 combines. Right? Let's say you blew 10 combines, 50K accounts, 10, that's $490. And then the next account you get $1,000 payout. You're fucking $510 in the green. Well, I guess minus the activation fee. So you're like $400. You know, you're in the green by a few $100. We'll put it that way, right? So it's like you really just have to change. You just have to have a different perspective if you're going to trade props. I just don't know how else to put it. It's just a different game, right? Don't look at it like 150. Don't look at it like 100. Don't look at it like 50. It's not that. It's 2,000, 3,000, 4,500. That's what it is. That's the account you have. Your account size is your margin. Just like on a live account, your account size is your margin. So it's no different. So I only say that it's only important because you just can't beat yourself up over it, right? You're not going to beat yourself up over, you know, you lost 3%. Wow. End of the world. Just terrible at trading now. I lost 3%. Oh no. Oh no, I'll never recover from this. Oh no, I'm the worst. Oh no, I need to trade some other strategy now. I lost 3% trading ICT concepts. They don't work. I lost 3% trading order flow and volume profile. I better maybe I should trade ICT concepts. I saw an ICT trader post a big win today on Twitter. Oh no, world's ending. Oh no, Patrick Weiland posted another 600K payout after spending 300K on prop firms. I better do what he says. I better buy his course. Took a month off in December, and I'm in a losing streak now that I'm back. I was doing great before, now I'm kind of lost. I know what needs to be done, but this is whack. Yeah, what's funny is this is how I'm performing right now. Right? It's like feels like I don't want to say death by 1,000 cuts because there have been some wins sprinkled in. They've just been a little bit more scarce. So it's forcing me to really dial in my patience and my risk management. But this is very oddly similar to how it was for me at the beginning of last year in January. Keep in mind, again, we were at all-time highs last year at the beginning of the year as well. So, you know, kind of repeating history a little bit. And this is exactly what it was like. Wasn't great. Wasn't terrible. It was like this hovering around a state of green and red break even. You know? So for some traders, for some people, they might look at that and say, so why don't you just take it off? And that's an option. You can take off January going forward if that's your conclusion by the end of this month, looking ahead to future years. But it's not necessary. The only reason you should make it a hard rule to take off is if you can't handle the stress and the discipline required to not f your shit up, right? Then take off. Yeah, if you're gonna just blow everything up a million times over because the conditions are not favorable for you, then yeah, maybe you should take off. But I mean, if you have any ability to self-control, you don't need to take off. I still think personally the experience is valuable.
The other
Somebody
element
that's
to
been
watch, I
trading
think,
for
might be
years.
sanctions after his comments yesterday
that-
about the potential to add fresh sanctions on Russia, something that actually got pretty well received by NATO today.
Absolutely. The Russia sanctions and the tariff threat on Russia yesterday as well. And that was something, Carl, that was a huge topic of discussion in Scott Bessent, the incoming Treasury Secretary's confirmation hearing last week with sanctions. Bessent coming out really strong, saying he thought the last administration didn't come out strong enough on sanctions, saying we were too dependent on our adversaries for oil. That's why we weren't coming on stronger. So you can see the connection there with this sort of drill energy agenda with coming on stronger on sanctions as well. You're very right that could be a topic. And mentioning the banks as well, there's been a lot of optimism in Davos. You're absolutely right. That's one group that is really thinking they'll benefit from a friendlier administration with Trump in the White House than they did under President Biden.
And, I know you keep track more closely than many, in fact, perhaps any do, in terms of what we're likely to get on tariffs. What's the latest chatter, whether it be 10% across the board, Mexico and Canada, not China, yes, China?
I just pulled up Squawk on the Street, start kind of monitoring the Trump speech that's coming up here in just a few minutes. We're starting to get some good movement in the market, as predicted. ES a little bit stronger at the moment than NQ, although it did look like that might flip for a second there. But PDH is kind of looking interesting, I think, at this point. We're again, it sort of fits our overall bull bias for the day. But with Trump talking here in the next few minutes, I'm just gonna have a hard time taking anything. If it wasn't, maybe if it was on a different topic, but addressing the leaders at the WEF, I mean, a lot of economic implications there. So I think we'll probably take it easy until he's done and kind of see what the market gives us. But it's just an overall really rough day, rough morning of consolidation. So I guess we'll see if PM clears up at all. But I won't be around for that. But maybe you guys can take a little bit of advantage of that.
and it's around unleashing the energy market. It's around maintaining the U.S. edge on AI. And I believe in all of that. And I believe that there'll be animal spirits.
One of the key learnings from me these days has been the optimism that we see, especially in enterprise customers. I think deregulation is going to help to drive growth, and everything that will drive growth will be good for our company. So we are optimistic about the impact that some of these actions are going to be taking on the economy and on the business.
The U.S. economy is in pretty good shape, Andrew, as we head into this new administration. But I think the thing that I'm encouraged about, and as I talk to clients, I'm finding clients are really encouraged about, it seems like, and this is true in the U.S., it's true with the new administration.
From our standpoint and from my standpoint, we want this administration to succeed. When this administration succeeds, the country does well, business does well.
I think the difference is, the feeling is they're off to a much faster start this time because they've been through it before. They have
Trump this time around. Remember, he came to Davos a few years ago. This time he's coming in virtually, obviously a big week, the week of the inauguration. And of course, everyone's already talking about, Carl and Leslie, whether he'll be here in person next year.
That's a good question, Sarah, and it'll be interesting to see what his remarks focus on in just a few moments' time. I'm curious if, the conversations that you're having with people behind the scene mirrors what they're saying on TV. Is it that same optimism and jubilance, or are there a little, is there a little bit more skepticism as people are, not on the record?
I think there is that level of optimism. I would say the only thing that I hear about is, okay, well, now they have to execute. They have a pretty ambitious growth agenda. They want to lower the deficit at the same time as growing GDP. Well, those two things can be difficult, right? We know they want to impose tariffs, but also keep inflation from being too high for Americans. That's what President Trump ran on. Those two things can sometimes go in conflict. So it's about the execution of some of these policies. But I think they are very optimistic. And one reason why is because they have a seat at the table, that he has business people in government, that he is going to run this government much like a business organization, even with a department looking at cost cuts and that sort of thing. And so this is the real test of business. And we've seen, for instance, how close he is with Elon Musk, with now Mark Zuckerberg. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, the fact is businesses do have a say when it comes to making policy, and that is something they are obviously very optimistic about. Look, I would just say, as far as other world leaders, this is his first opportunity here to address the world stage here in Europe. We did have a few of them. We had the Chancellor of Germany here. We had President Zelensky of Ukraine here. We just had this morning speaking President Milei of Argentina, who is a close friend of Trump. He came from the inauguration here to Davos. It was his second time. And guess what he talked about at the World Economic Forum? Always a disruptor. He talked about the failing mental virus of woke ideology. And Milei called it the great pandemic of our time that needs to be cured. It is the cancer that must be cut out, which was sort of a good preview, I think, for President Trump here in a few moments.
Yeah, interesting. Some of the executive orders that got revoked this week actually are not new orders related to DEI, so to speak. They go back to LBJ. On tariffs, Sarah, it's interesting. Again, we run into this collision of ideas, whether they are a revenue enhancer to pay for tax cuts or a negotiating tactic that gives you leverage over a different outcome. And it's going to be interesting to see how it can be both.
It can be both, right? They could raise money. I mean, they could raise revenue, and that's something the U.S. government needs to do right now. It's a much more old school way of doing it. That's how it used to be done. But since then, it's been booming free trade and elimination of tariffs. So definitely a revenue raiser. And we all know art of the deal, negotiating tactic. But will be interesting when it comes to issues around national security, particularly around China. The other thing I'm hearing as far as the optimism that is around the business community here is that people are more optimistic about the U.S.-China relationship, which is something I haven't heard in a while. Ray Dalio was just speaking on a panel with me, and he talked about this, the fact that there's already open dialogue between Presidents Trump and Xi. He sees
Well, thank you very much, Klaus, and hello to everyone in beautiful Davos. This has been a truly historic week in the United States. 3 days ago, I took the oath of office, and we began the golden age of America. The recent presidential election was won by millions of votes, and all seven, every one of them, all seven swing states. It was a massive mandate from the American people like hasn't been seen in many years, and some of the political pundits, even some of my so-called enemies, said it was the most consequential election victory in 129 years. That's quite nice. What the world has witnessed in the past 72 hours is nothing less than a revolution of common sense. Our country will soon be stronger, wealthier, and more united than ever before, and the entire planet will be more peaceful and prosperous as a result of this incredible momentum and what we're doing and going to do. My administration is acting with unprecedented speed to fix the disasters we've inherited from a totally inept group of people and to solve every single crisis facing our country. This begins with confronting the economic chaos caused by the failed policies of the last administration. Over the past 4 years, our government racked up $8 trillion in wasteful deficit spending and inflicted nation-wrecking energy restrictions, crippling regulations, and hidden taxes like never before. The result is the worst inflation crisis in modern history and sky-high interest rates for our citizens and even throughout the world. Food prices and the price of almost every other thing known to mankind went through the roof. President Biden totally lost control of what was going on in our country, but in particular with our high inflation economy and at our border. Because of these ruinous policies, total government spending this year is $1.5 trillion higher than was projected to occur when I left office just 4 years ago. Likewise, the cost of servicing the debt is more than 230% higher than was projected in 2020. The inflation rate we are inheriting remains 50% higher than the historic target. It was the highest inflation probably in the history of our country. That's why from the moment I took office, I've taken rapid action to reverse each and every one of these radical left policies that created this calamity, in particular with immigration, crime, and inflation. On day one, I signed an executive order directing every member of my cabinet to marshal all powers at their disposal to defeat inflation and reduce the cost of daily life. I imposed a federal hiring freeze, a federal regulation freeze, a foreign aid freeze, and I created the new Department of Government Efficiency. I terminated the ridiculous and incredibly wasteful Green New Deal. I call it the Green New Scam. Withdrew from the one-sided Paris Climate Accord and ended the insane and costly electric vehicle mandate. We're going to let people buy the car they want to buy. I declared a national energy emergency, and it's so important, national energy emergency to unlock the liquid gold under our feet and pave the way for rapid approvals of new energy infrastructure. The United States has the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we're going to use it. Not only will this reduce the cost of virtually all goods and services, it'll make the United States a manufacturing superpower and the world capital of artificial intelligence and crypto. My administration has also begun the largest deregulation campaign in history, far exceeding even the record-setting efforts of my last term. In total, the Biden administration imposed $50,000 in additional regulatory costs on the average American household over the last 4 years. I have promised to eliminate 10 old regulations for every new regulation, which will soon put many thousands of dollars back in the pockets of American families. To further unleash our economy, our majorities in the House and Senate, which we also took along with the presidency, are going to pass the largest tax cut in American history, including massive tax cuts for workers and family, and big tax cuts for domestic producers and manufacturers. And we're working with the Democrats on getting an extension of the original Trump tax cuts, as you probably know, by just reading any paper. My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt. Under the Trump administration, there will be no better place on earth to create jobs, build factories, or grow a company than right here in the good old USA. Already Americans economic, you can see this, I think, maybe even in your wonderful, wonderful room that you're all gathered together, so many of my friends, but Americans, the economic confidence is soaring like we haven't seen in many, many decades, maybe not at all. Upon my election, it was just announced that small business optimism skyrocketed by 41 points in a single month. That's the highest ever. There's never been anything like that. SoftBank has announced between a $100 and $200 billion investment in the U.S. economy because of the election result. And just 2 days ago, Oracle, SoftBank, and OpenAI announced a $500 billion investment in AI infrastructure. Other companies likewise have announced billions and billions and billions, adding up to trillions of investment in America, in the United States. And it's also reported today in the papers that Saudi Arabia will be investing at least $600 billion in America, but I'll be asking the Crown Prince, who's a fantastic guy, to round it out to around $1 trillion. I think they'll do that because we've been very good to them. And I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which frankly, I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. That didn't show a lot of love by them not doing it. I was a little surprised by that. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that that war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end that war. They should have done it long ago. They're very responsible, actually, to a certain extent for what's taking place. Millions of lives are being lost. With oil prices going down, I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world. Interest rates should follow us. All over, the progress that you're seeing is happening because of our historic victory in a recent presidential election, one that has become quite well known throughout the world. I think a lot of things are happening to a lot of countries. They say that there's light shining all over the world since the election, and even countries that we aren't particularly friendly with are happy because they understand what there is a future and how great the future will be. Under our leadership, America is back and open for business. And this week, I'm also taking swift action to stop the invasion at our southern border. They allowed people to come in at levels that nobody's ever seen before. It was ridiculous. I decided and declared to do, and very, very importantly, a national emergency on our border, immediately halted all entry of illegal border crossers, of which there were many, and began promptly returning the illegal trespassers back to the place from which they came. That action, as you've probably seen, has already started very strongly. I've deployed active duty U.S. military and National Guard troops to the border to assist in repelling the invasion. It was really an invasion. We will not allow our territory to be violated. After 4 long years, the United States is strong and sovereign and a beautiful nation. Once again, it's a strong, sovereign nation. In addition, I'm pleased to report that America is also a free nation once again. On day one, I signed an executive order to stop all government censorship. No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation, which are the favorite words of censors and those who wish to stop the free exchange of ideas and, frankly, progress. We have saved free speech in America, and we've saved it strongly. With another historic executive order this week, I also ended the weaponization of law enforcement against the American people and, frankly, against politicians, and restored the fair, equal, and impartial rule of law. My administration has taken action to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And these are policies that were absolute nonsense throughout the government and the private sector. With the recent yet somewhat unexpected great Supreme Court decision just made, America will once again become a merit-based country. You have to hear that word, merit-based country.
Yeah, I
And
hope you
I've
guys aren't
made
trying
it
to trade this.
official,
It's
an official
back and
policy of
forth
the
and pretty
United
volatile.
States that there are only two genders, male and female.
And we're just
And
kind
we
of
will
inversing
have
gaps
no
left and
men
right on both sides. I
participating
mean,
in
so
women's sports
it'd be really hard to
and
pick a direction here
transgender
and
operations, which became the
have a
rage,
stop
will
that would
occur
make sense
very rarely.
given the volatility.
Finally,
So
as we
it
restore
really is
common
just
sense
best
in America,
to sit
we're
out.
moving
I keep
quickly
high
to
in
bring
this
back strength and
prior day
peace
high
and
on ES,
stability
really.
abroad.
And
I'm
even that
also
New York
going to
PM high
ask
from
all NATO
yesterday, we
nations
got a
to
few
increase defense
equal
spending
highs
to
over there.
5%
It
of
looks, I mean,
GDP,
they look great
which is
for
what
more
it should
upside,
have
but
been years ago.
I
It was
just
only at 2%,
it's
and
too
most
volatile and there's
nations
too
didn't pay
much
until I
uncertainty
came
with
along. I
what he's going to
insisted
say.
that
The
they
market's
pay, and
certainly
they
paying
did,
attention and certainly
because the
moving to what he
United
said
States was really paying the
so far.
difference
So
at that time, and
it really is
was
best to just sit
unfair
out
to
on
the
here.
United States. But many, many things have been unfair for many years to the United States. Before even taking office, my team negotiated a ceasefire agreement in the Middle East, which wouldn't have happened without us, as I think most of the people in the room know. Earlier this week, the hostages began to return to their families. They are returning, and it's a beautiful sight, and they'll be coming in more and more. They started coming back on Sunday. Our efforts to secure a peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine are now hopefully underway. It's so important to get that done. That is an absolute killing field. Millions of soldiers are being killed. Nobody's seen anything like it since World War II. They're laying dead all over the flat fields. It's a flat field farmland, and there's millions of Russians and millions of Ukrainians. Nobody's seen anything like it since World War II. It's time to end it. And here in America, we have big events coming up. Next year, we have the 250th anniversary of America's founding. I'm so honored to be president during that. That's been a big event. They've been talking about it for 10 years. We also have the World Cup, and I understand Gianni's in the room. Infantino, he was very instrumental in helping us get it. He's there with you someplace, I think, and I want to thank him for that. And then we have the Olympics coming up, which I was instrumental in getting also in my first term. And who would have known that by skipping a term, I would get the Olympics? I was upset. I said, you know, I got the Olympics to come and I won't be president. But it turned out through a stroke of luck, or whatever you might call it, that I'm going to be president during the World Cup and the Olympics and the 250th anniversary. So that's going to be three big events. And we've accomplished more in less than 4 days. We have really been working 4 days than other administrations have accomplished in 4 years. And we're just getting started. It's really an amazing thing to see, and the spirit and the light over our country has been incredible. Under the last administration, our nation has suffered greatly, but we're going to bring it back and make it greater, bigger, stronger, better than ever before. I want to thank everybody for being with you. I would have been there myself, except the inauguration was 2 days ago. I thought it might be a little bit quick to make it the first stop. But we'll get there one day. We hope to get there. But I do appreciate, I heard the audience is fantastic, and many of my friends are in the audience. And I will be taking questions now from some very distinguished people. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that very powerful speech. And I think you could hear the applause all the way from Davos to the White House. But next year it will be even better, because then you can get the applause here in Davos. So we wish you welcome to our village next year. We hope to see you.
Thank you very much.
So we also know, Mr. President, that you open up for interaction here. We have a great panel with some of the most distinguished business people in the world. Let me start with someone that you know really well, that I think is almost a neighbor of you in Florida. Mr. Steve Schwartzman, Chairman, CEO, and co-founder of Blackstone Group. So, Steve, floor is yours.
Well, Mr. President, I'm sure the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia will be really glad you gave this speech today. You've had the busiest 4 days that anybody can imagine, and congratulations for that. My question is about some of the things I've observed here at Davos. It's a terrific forum. I've met lots of people, as usual. I think I've been here 30 years. And a lot of the European business people have expressed enormous frustration with the regulatory regime in the EU, and they attribute slower growth rates here because of numerous factors, but especially because of regulations. And you've taken a completely different approach in this area. And if you could explain the theory of what you're doing, how you're going to do it, and what you expect the outcome to be, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations, Steve. You're a friend of mine, but on a great career. You have had an amazing career, and it continues. I just want to congratulate you. Very inspirational to a lot of people. I want to talk about the EU, because you mentioned specifically that I have also had a lot of friends and leaders of countries. I've gotten to know them all my first term and a little bit during this period of 4 years, and know them well, like them a lot, but they're very frustrated because of the time everything seems to take to get approved, environmental impact statements for things that you shouldn't even have to do that, and many, many other ways that it takes. And I'm going to give you a quick little example. In the private life, my beautiful private life, before I had all these things happening, the world is a little different. I had a nice, simple life. You knew that. But when I had that simple life, I did projects, and I had a big project in Ireland, and it had to get approval on something that would have made it even better. And I got the approval from Ireland in a period of a week. And it was a very, very, very efficient, good approval. And they informed me, though, the problem is you're going to have to get it from the EU, and we think that'll take 5 to 6 years. And I said, you have to be kidding. And this was before politics. And I said, wait a minute, it's not that important. I don't want to go 5 or 6 years, but it would have been a big investment. It would have been nice, and it would have been good for the project. And I sent the people to the EU to see if they could speed it up, and basically it was a 5 or 6 year wait just to get a simple approval that Ireland gave me in a period of literally not much more than a week. And I realized right then, that was the first time I really was involved with the EU, but I realized right then that's a problem, and I didn't even bother applying to do it. Or if I did, I pulled it very quickly. I have to be very accurate because I don't want to be criticized. He did apply, actually. No, I want to be very accurate. So I don't think I did, but if I did, I pulled it very quickly. It was just something you couldn't wait 5 years or 6 years to get an approval. So a lot of, in a very big business sense, a lot of people are claiming that's the problem. From the standpoint of America, the EU treats us very, very unfairly, very badly. They have a large tax that we know about, and a VAT tax, and it's a very substantial one. They don't take essentially don't take our farm products, and they don't take our cars, yet they send cars to us by the millions. They put tariffs on things that we want to do. Like, for instance, I think they actually, in terms of these are non-economic or non-monetary tariffs, and those are very bad, and they make it very difficult to bring products into Europe, and yet they expect to be selling, and they do sell their products in the United States. So we have, hundreds of billions of dollars of deficits with the EU. And nobody's happy with it, and we're going to do something about it, but nobody's happy with it. So I think the EU has to speed up their process. Friends of mine that are in some of the nations within the EU, great people, they want to be able to compete better, and you can't compete when you can't go through the approval process fast. There's no reason why it can't go faster. So, I'm trying to be constructive because I love Europe. I love the countries of Europe, but the process is a very cumbersome one. And they do treat the United States of America very, very unfairly with the VAT taxes and all of the other taxes they impose. One other, just to finish up, I got a call from the head of a major airline, one of the biggest airlines in the world, and he said, "Sir, could you help us? What? Landing in Europe is brutal. They charge us fees for everything, and it's so unfair." I said, "How does it compare to China?" He said, it's much worse. And the other thing, as you know, they took court cases with Apple, and they supposedly won a case that most people didn't think was much of a case. They won 15 or 16 billion from Apple. They won billions from Google. I think they're after Facebook for billions and billions. These are American companies, whether you like them or not. They're American companies, and they shouldn't be doing that. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a form of taxation. So we have some very big complaints with the EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll now go to one of your friends in the EU, Patrick Pouyanné. He's the chairman CEO of Total Energies. I guess you have a question ready, Patrick, for the president.
Mr. President, as we understand, energy is at the top of your agenda, and it's an honor for me to represent the energy industry tonight. In this panel, Total Energies is indeed the fourth largest oil and gas and electricity company in the world. I will not ask you a question about the oil price. It's quite clear what you expect from us. I will go to gas more. And our company is the largest #1 exporter LNG from the US company. We are a strong contributor to, and we invest in a mammoth LNG projects in Texas, $20 billion. It's far from 200, but it's $20 billion. And we contribute with that to security of supply to Europe, as we export this LNG to Europe. Some experts fear that if there are too many projects developed in the US on LNG, this could have an inflationary impact on the US domestic gas price. And they recommend a pause on these projects. I would ask you the following question. What are your views about such a pause on investments on LNG in the US? What would happen if you would observe an increased domestic gas price because of these exports? And final question, which is important for Europe, would you agree to guarantee security of supply of US LNG to Europe?
Well, in the last part of your question, yes, I would. I would make sure that you get it. If we make a deal, we make a deal, you'll get it. Because a lot of people do have that problem. They make a deal and then it can't get supplied because of war-type problems and other problems. So we would absolutely do that. LNG is very interesting because when I took office for the first term, one of the first things I looked at was there were two very massive plants in Louisiana, a state that has been very good to me, won it by many, many points. And I felt strongly indebted to it, actually. And they said there are two plants that have been under environmental consideration for more than 10 years. And they were costing, as you say, you know how expensive those plants are, but they were costing like 12 billion and I think 14 or 15 billion, but they couldn't get their permits. They were in review for years, many, many years, like a decade. or more. And I said, so ridiculous. I know so much about that because in the construction industry, I had to go through it too, but I got good at it after a while. But I saw the projects, and you're talking about a total investment of 25 to $30 billion, and it looked like it was going to end. They couldn't get their permits, and I got them done in less than a week. It was done, completed. In fact, when they called them to announce that it was done, the countries, largely countries, Japan was involved and another country and some very big investors, they couldn't believe it. They actually couldn't believe it. And I said, just do yourself one favor. Don't pay any consultants, because the only one that got it done was me. I got it done because it was the right thing to do for the U.S. and for the world, but the consultants had nothing to do with it. You know, the consultants go in and they say, give us millions of dollars because Trump did it. Nobody called me about it. I just heard it was a problem for years. And I got it done because it was the right thing to do for the U.S. and the right thing to do for beyond. It had to do with energy, very important. So I think it's very important. I think I disagree with one. I think the more that you do, the lower the price is going to go. And what I'd like to see is rapid approvals. We're going to give very rapid approvals in the United States, like with the AI plants, talking to many people want to build them. That's going to be a very big thing. We're going to build electric generating facilities. They are going to build. I'm going to get them the approval. Under emergency declaration, I can get the approvals done myself without having to go through years of waiting. And the big problem is we need double the energy we currently have in the United States. Can you imagine? For AI to really be as big as we want to have it, because it's a very competitive, it'll be very competitive with China and others. So I'm going to give emergency declarations so that they can start building them almost immediately. And I think it was largely my idea because nobody thought this was possible. It wasn't that they were not smart, because they're the smartest, but I told them that what I want you to do is build your electric generating plant right next to your plant as a separate building connected. And they said, wow, you're kidding. And I said, no, I'm not kidding. You don't have to hook into the grid, which is old and, could be taken out. If it's taken out, they wouldn't have any way to get any electricity. So we are going to allow them to go in a very rapid.
It does look like we're starting to head up to that prior day high. It just really hasn't given us any opportunity for entry. I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 things you could have played here, but again, with just so much uncertainty, I really don't think it's worth putting the risk on. I was eyeing an inversion setup. Let me go to the 1 minute over here. I did eye this inversion setup pretty hard. And it does look like it's playing out, but the volatility in here was just so much that I just didn't trust. I really didn't trust any PD arrays to hold up, frankly. And so what I sort of entertained was let me get my position tool. It did not inverse. The 11:10 candle came back down again. Big volatility came back. Did inverse. I was looking at a retest with the stop at this candle at the body low, targeting prior day high. And it does look like that's panning out. I would certainly be. My plan was to go break even at New York PM over here. Previous days, New York PM. So we haven't quite hit it yet, but again, this was just an idea. It's certainly not prudent to take it in this, given Trump still talking and hitting on some pretty big subjects. I would not feel good about taking this, especially with how price was this morning. So there's just too many things going against it. But just to kind of give you an idea of what I was looking at, maybe it's just sort of a learning moment, teaching moment. We're always looking for good retracements with a sharp displacement in the opposite direction and a violation of a PD array, whether it's a fair value gap, an order block, a breaker, whatever it may be. And so we certainly got that. Unfortunately, given the environment, just not a good time to take it.
If you make your product in the U.S. So we're going to have the lowest, just about the lowest rate. It'll be the 21 is on the low side worldwide. The 15 is about as low as it gets, and by far the lowest of a large country, a large, rich, powerful country by far, not even a contest. So we're going to bring it down to 15% if you make your product in the USA. So that's going to create a tremendous buzz. We're also probably going back to the 1 year deduction where we deduct, we did that originally, and that was amazing what the impact that had, the 1 year deduction, which built up over a period of time, and then it expires. But we're going to go back to that when we do the renewal of the Trump tax plan. We have to get Democrats to approve it. But, if the Democrats didn't approve it, I don't know how they can survive with about a 45% tax increase, because that's what it would be. And so I think they're going to do. We've been working along with them pretty well. I think it's very hard for a political group to say, let's charge people 45%.
I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here. I'm not really seeing anything or anything on the horizon that I'm going to be interested in. We're so close to prior day high. It's really throwing any sort of risk to reward off on ES. For me, it's just kind of a tough morning. Obviously, really rough price action going back to 4 o'clock Eastern. And then with Trump talking at 10 and the associated volatility and uncertainty, just not worth taking a trade probably this AM. So I will say PM probably shaping up to be a little bit more friendly. So I guess you guys try to pay attention to that. Be safe though. Always frame it in the context of your edge, and stay patient and wait for the trade to come to you. So with that, I'm going to sign off. I appreciate anybody listening potentially, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.